For those that don't know, about a year ago, I was actually Valerie had a conference in Chicago, so I was going to going to drive her there and go fishing around Michigan a bit. And Ethan and I tried to hook up, just couldn't make it happen. And then, as it turned out, I had a massive uh, psoriatic arthritis flare, and I didn't end up going myself. So that sucked. But Ethan did a little bit of a tour in the rivers, or a river. How'd that? How? What was the situation there?
So, I think a couple things. So, Barry, as he alluded to, we've been trying to fish together if it ever works out. So whether that's if I'm ever in Maryland for whatever reason, which I don't foresee happening anytime soon, if I'm being honest with you,
Right.
or if he's ever in Michigan for any reason, like we would love to link up and fish. So Barry is obviously a big river smallmouth fisherman, and you'll see a lot of that on his channel. If you have not watched his videos already, you absolutely should. He does a lot of wonderful river smallmouth fishing.
Thank you.
But anyways, recently I started what I call River Bronze, the Pursuit of a 20, which is a series dedicated to river smallmouth. So I have been hitting the rivers hard, or I really had been this spring and early summer. I haven't been out in a while, but I've really been focused on river fishing in my area, and with a main goal of just becoming a better smallmouth fisherman, but at the same time, like ultimately, I want to catch a 20 incher. So that's kind of like my end goal kind of thing, where it's like in order to get a 20 incher, I feel like you have to put in a lot of time and effort. And if you put in a lot of time and effort, you learn things. And that's how I see it. And that's the same thing that I did with bluegill. I did a pursuit of a 10, and my focus was catching 18
Right.
inch bluegill. And I knew that that would not happen right away. And that was so intentional. Like I wanted to go through those experiences and become a better fisherman along the way. And I truly, truly feel like so much more confident in my bluegill like fishing skills now. And so that series alone, I have to credit to so much of my bluegill fishing techniques and skills. And so I figured by doing the same thing for a river smallmouth, the same thing will happen. So hopefully I catch a 20 incher eventually. But yeah,
How did you do in that series? What was your biggest?
well, it's not over. So I've done 5 videos, and I'm going to do more. I have not filmed anymore at this time. But as I mentioned, like as I get back to fishing, I'll film more, and I'll probably release them in kind of batches. It'll be like, hey, 5 videos here, and then I'll do another 3 or 4 whenever.
Right.
But so far, I think my biggest is like maybe 17 and a half. I've caught several anywhere from 16 to 17 and a half. No giants yet, but I've had a couple hooked that I would say probably were over 18.
Right.
Um, and that's the way it goes. Like if you know smallmouth as well as I do, which I think you probably know them better than me, um, they are good at shaking a hook. It's what they do, man. They're a sport fish. Like they are a probably the one of the best freshwater sport fish out there. And
I I
yeah, they can
agree.
shake a hook. So
Yeah. I got addicted really quickly. The first couple of times, particularly river smallmouth.
yeah,
We've got a few reservoirs around here that hold them, and you can do absolute bang up jobs catching smallies all day long on some of these reservoirs, but they don't have the same spunk as those river smallies.
oh yeah. No, I grew up in Kansas, hence the Kansas shirt. You gotta show your love for where you're from. But I grew up in Kansas, so we had a lot of reservoir fishing. It was either like farm ponds, a few small lakes, or reservoirs. And we did have some pretty good smallmouth fishing in the reservoirs. And don't get me wrong, those fish are incredible and they fight hard too.
Yeah.
And another thing that Kansas has is a ton of wind, and I think that that kind of acts like current to an extent, but it's
Mm.
just not the same. Like you get a 13 to 14 inch smallmouth in a river, and you can be using a medium heavy rod, and they're still going to put up a fight
Oh
like a
yeah.
solid largemouth bass in a pond. So it's like
Right.
there's nothing built quite like a river smallie, and that's why I was super stoked to get the series started.
Yeah. That's yeah. So I saw you using a whopper plopper
Hmm.
uh, that chartreuse one. I forget. Sooner, I believe, is the
I
name of
don't
it.
know the name of it.
Yeah, yeah. Next door neighbor Gary, who ends up in a lot of my videos. One of his best quotes is, as far as Smallies are concerned, pick any color you want as long as it's chartreuse.
That's fair.
And yeah, it's a totally fair statement. I mean, we absolutely rock it on chartreuse in the Mid Atlantic here, and on the cool thing about that and it's kind of all aesthetics, and it probably really doesn't matter. But the cool thing about the purple jig head is that it matches up perfectly with um, Z-Man's finesse TRD in I I don't think they call it twilight. Yeah, no, they call it twilight.
Oh, okay.
Twilight, midnight, dawn, same thing. You have a similar color in some of your soft plastics, right?
Or like Dakota Sunrise is,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Like the purple. Who knows? Maybe the purple will come back in a small rotation someday. Well, I hope you stocked up enough, right, to get you by for a while. But
Yeah, I've got some laying around. I was actually thinking about doing some of that for the giveaway, and I haven't mentioned that yet. God, we're almost 20 minutes in, and I haven't mentioned that yet.
that's all right.
Um, so we're doing giveaways tonight. Anybody that comments, actually, we're not doing it tonight. We're doing it with this video. Anybody that comments in the chat, or if you're watching this on replay, make a comment in the comment section. That's one entry. It doesn't matter how many times you comment. Um, uh, there's three things being given away. One of them is a pair of muleys right there. That's
Yeah, truce.
1/16th and 1/32. This will get you started in probably, as far as I'm concerned, one of the best Ned rig situations that you can be in. I use the 1/32 on the finesse TRD, and I use the 1/16th on the big TRD. And occasionally, when there's a little more current, I'll skip it up to 1/16th with the finesse if there's a little more current and it needs to drop a little faster. But the fall ratio on that setup is just awesome, and you'll absolutely love it. Another thing we got, Cotton Cordell Crazy Shad 3-pack.
Hmm.
A really cool kind of finessey topwater bait. They come in at 3/8 of an ounce, so
Nice.
that's pretty cool. And then the last thing, a fresh black mule hat. So
I didn't know you had a fresh one. That I don't even have
yeah,
one of those. You must have held
yeah,
on to that for a while.
I have held on to it for quite a while, kind of in anticipation for this video right
That's
here.
pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet, honestly, because like there's no more of those out there that are like, and I don't think I'll do a plain black one again. So like that's pretty sick. That's a sweet prize.
Well,
Not
then
gonna
now that Ethan just said that, forget this. I'm keeping no, I'm
lie.
kidding. It's going out. It's
Gotta get
going
a
out.
black one, man. That's sick.
So yeah, there's going to be basically three opportunities to get these, and what I'll be doing is a week from tonight, I'll be doing a just a random YouTube comment picker thing, and there's a little box that you can check on it to where it only counts people once. You know, if you make 1,000 comments, it doesn't mean 1,000 entries or anything like that. So you said as we were backstage before the show, you wanted to pick my brain a little bit about river smallies.
Yeah, man. So you've spent a lot of time river smallmouth fishing. So, you know, I've seen I definitely know your confidence like zone. Like I know like the type of stuff that you like to throw, obviously, and I'm very thankful that you like to throw mule jigs so much. And
Yeah.
you know, you're kind of a I would say definitely like a finesse or like you're a finesse fisherman, but you don't you can beef it up a little bit. Like you like to upsize the profile just a little bit, right? With going to like more the big TRD and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah,
And then
yeah.
you definitely dabble with some top, like some top waters and that sort of thing. But I guess for me, as I'm looking to try to find some of these like next level size smallmouth, what have been some of the big things for you outside of bait selection, in finding, locating, and landing some of your biggest smallmouth?
Um, Real estate, the best real estate. The bigger fish will always be in the best locations, and when I say that, you know what I mean. But if you're in kind of a long flat where there's not a whole lot of features, and then there's a couple of features like a couple of big rocks or a good uh, dip in the riverbed or whatnot, they tend to dominate those areas, and that they'll pretty much chase a lot of other smallies out of there just so they can have the
So
best real estate.
you feel like when you find a big smallmouth, do you feel like you're finding them semi isolated, or are you catching a lot of fish around them too?
It For the most part, yes, they're isolated by themselves. I'll always, especially after getting a big fish, I will always cast back to the same place.
Yeah,
Um, but I've done, uh, and bearing in mind that I'm in the Mid Atlantic, I've
sure.
done four smallies that were 20-inch plus, and total ever.
Yeah.
That's a huge, huge fish in the Mid Atlantic, and yeah, they were all by themselves. Now, last year I hooked into one in kind of a weird spot, so it doesn't really apply. Um, I cast upstream into an area that's, in fact, think I featured it in my last video. I just made a couple of quick casts into this before I went over it, and got into two smallies relatively easily. But it was in that area, and I hooked into it, and it immediately darted downstream.
Hmm.
And so it ran past me, and it had a couple of 14 to 16-inch smallies chasing it.
Okay.
So I mean, it was almost like it was a kind of a do no wrong type situation. If any one of those fish had bit, I would have been totally happy. But anyway, so the thing darts downstream. I've got tons of slack in my line. There's no way that I can keep up with it. And by the time it got taut again, and the drag started spitting for about a second, and pop, that was that. I was like, damn
Yeah.
it. Uh, but but yeah, that's kind of a unique situation. I almost on huge fish, I almost never see followers.
Hmm.
Almost never. They tend to be isolated, and they take up a really good real estate, like ahead of a boulder, behind a boulder, deepest little cuts, little spaces between rocks, stuff like that. Um, that tends to be where the pigs lie.
Man, I would love to fish some of your waters. I tell you, those things like the rivers, certain stretches of river that you fish, just so beautiful. And just the sheer quantity of fish. Clearly, they're just a very, very healthy ecosystem for where smallmouth really thrive. So, um,
And it's
definitely,
it,
definitely look forward to hopefully someday getting out there because it looks sick.
it is, especially considering that pretty much everything that you see on my channel is within the Potomac River watershed.
Hmm.
And 30 years ago, um, you wouldn't even want to touch Potomac water.
Hmm.
You'd want to wash your hands afterwards. Um, it was gross, and they've done a really, really good job of cleaning that stuff up. And in fact, the Monocacy, my home river, that thing was given scenic river status about, I think it was about 20 years ago, because they thought that the fish populations were never going to recover from the pollution.
Wow.
And two of my two of my 20s have come out of that river.
Yeah. Well, goes to show, I guess taking care of, trying to make efforts and taking care of our environment. Hopefully, it gives an opportunity to recover. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely a lot of rivers out there that are probably not treated super well. I mean, quite honestly, I feel like some of the stuff that I fish, there's certain places in Michigan that I fish that it's like it's pretty pristine, it's well kept, it's
Mhm.
beautiful,
Right.
and the ecosystem reflects that. And there's certain ones that it's like, gets a little more pollution, not quite as well kept, and I feel like the populations aren't as good. And yeah, it's one of those deals. I mean, there's obviously 1,000 things you can point to, but I don't know. I definitely like the pristine waters that are a little bit better kept.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, you were on vacation and did, I believe it was a two-parter in probably one of the clearest lakes I've ever seen.
Oh, sure.
Um, that was amazing, and the first episode of that, I was pretty much screaming at the TV, "Get on the Ned rig!" And once you did, you started hammering him, man.
Yeah, it's kind of trippy though. So that lake is super deep and super clear.
Yeah,
And I think I think it was timing to an extent too. I mean, I think the Ned rig certainly was a part of the success, and
sure.
a huge part of the success. Part of it was timing. I think I was up there for like three or 4 days. Made like a 3-part video. Um, but eventually, it was when the chop was blowing up into shallow rocks, and that's when the Ned rig really worked too. But
Yeah.
that lake is really deep and it has like a very distinct drop off location around like 15 to 20 foot, and then let alone other big
Oof.
drop offs elsewhere. I mean, I had my kayak in over 100 foot of water a few times. Just an incredible, beautiful lake. But I guess my point is like I believe there's a lot of different ways you can catch them in places like that, depending on the what the weather's doing, what time of year, so on and so forth.
Sure.
And I bet you Ned rig more often than not is probably not the play, because a lot of times those fish are likely going to set up a little bit probably deeper than a
Yeah.
Ned rig is going to truly shine in.
Right.
Unless you're fishing like a really really heavy Ned rig, which you call it whatever you want. You can call it a heavy Ned rig, call it whatever, but I
Right.
don't necessarily consider it a Ned rig when you're rocking like a 3/8 ounce jig or a half ounce jig. But
I don't, and that's, yeah, that was actually something else that I wanted to talk to you about. I kind of find it hilarious that a company that makes one of the best soft plastics for Ned rig, Z-Man, um, they basically go down to 1/15 of an ounce on their jigs.
yeah, no, whatever. That
Exactly. I'll use 1/15 if I need to get it a little deeper, and that's pretty much it. Uh, I actually that's not true. There's a um, there's a body of water. It's uh, it's an impoundment on the is that the North Fork or the North Branch? This is the North Fork of the Potomac River. It's called Jennings Randolph, and there's water in there that's 150 feet deep. Um, it it houses largemouth, smallmouth, walleye, a lot of sunfish, and they stock it with trout at certain times of year. Um, that I will pop a 1/8 ounce jig head on either a finesse or a big TRD just to get it down a little quicker. Uh, and that tends to do pretty well. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The Ned rig is not suitable for a lot of stuff. And one of the main reasons that people see me using it so much is that I tend to stick to smaller rivers that don't
Hmm.
have a whole lot of depth.
Sure.
So the slower the fall time, the better. The more time that a fish gets to have a look at that squirrely little bait, just kind of tweaking down, uh, you're likely to get hit. And most of the time, in my experience, especially on rivers, um, the hits usually come within 5 seconds of the cast.
Yeah, I tend to
Usually,
agree. Yeah, I mean, and these days I do a ton of ultralight fishing, and very, very similar, quite honestly. And whether you're talking just Ned rig for bass or ultralight for other species as well, I
right?
would say the same principles apply. It's like the original fall is usually when bites occur, um, and that crosses over several species. And
Sure,
it's the slower you can get that fall to be, generally speaking. The better. And that's where mule. It's like, with an ultralight perspective, it's like getting down to that 164th, even the 180th at times, and then rocking a high buoyancy plastic. It's like it can be challenging to cast for people that don't necessarily do a lot of fishing,
sure,
but the people that can kind of dial that in and understand how to properly operate an ultralight, man, I I think they'll most of them will tell you that it is a look that the fish don't see very often, and it
right,
leads to significantly more bites. And you're not sacrificing quality; you just get more quantity, and you're going to
right.
catch that quality with it. So, same principle applies to bass, and that's really how mule was kind of
Uh,
great for bass fishing, and then taking those and applying them broader scale to multi-species fishermen that weren't necessarily being catered to. We live in a world now where fishing industry is just so focused on making like super technique specific stuff, and I find it a little silly.
yeah, I do too. Um, and in fact, let me go back to. Oops, I don't have that open. Barry screws up again. Let's see. Fishing. All right. Mule fishing. Don't share the audio. Boom. And no. Nice try. There we go. Okay. So these guys, your donkey tails,
Hmm.
um, awesome on the jigs themselves. I also find them to be killer trailers at
What do you put them
times.
on? What do you use them as a trailer on?
Uh, uh, typically, uh, about quarter inch, like fully dressed jigs.
Really? Okay. Yeah, that's I've had a lot of people actually comment that, and I need to do more. I need to do more experimenting with like little finesse jigs with the donkey tail, because I do fish the. Actually, I think I have one right here.
By the way, that right there is my first super chat. Thank you, Valerie. We were testing that out. By the way, you know, the super chat thing is now a thing. I think we may have lost Ethan. Yep. All right, we've lost Ethan for the moment. There he is.
That was weird. Said I lost you.
Yeah, actually, a couple of minutes ago, you I guess got Comcasted or whatever for about, I don't know, about 10 seconds or so. But yeah, you seem up
Huh.
and good now.
Well, that's weird, but I don't know what I was saying.
Okay, you were reaching back. You got one right here.
Yeah, it's the Kitech. I use a little Kitech mono spin jig with my burrow bug, but I've had a lot of people tell me in the comments of my videos that they like to rock the donkey tail on a similar setup. So
Okay.
like a
Sh-
Strike
Can you
King
can you show
bits.
that one again?
Yeah, I don't have like super high res
Oh, okay.
video.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's
It's real
good.
tiny.
I get it. Nice.
Yeah, so it's a great little setup for finesse bass fishing. Let alone the fact that you can catch other species on it as well.
Right. Um, and then the other thing that I haven't done it yet, but I imagine that the mule minnow will do pretty well in similar situation. Like even you might even want to try that, maybe even with the smaller version. What is it? You get 3.2 and 2.2 and 1.2. I don't know. I think if you trail that with what you just held up, I,
Oh yeah,
it
yeah. I'll have to play
should
around with
work
it.
pretty well.
Yeah, I'm so accustomed to using crawfish or creature style baits on the back of like skirted jigs
Right.
that I don't always think to throw like a swim bait style profile or a minnow style profile on them, but that's totally irrational. I should definitely get that out there and try it. And like I said, I've heard a lot of people tell me that they do well on it. The Strike King
Yeah.
Bitsy jig, I think, is one that's quite popular.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. The Bitsy absolutely rocks for that stuff. In fact, that's exactly what I do, and it's a beautiful thing because um, the prices of mule fishing products are awesome. The those Bitsies are cheap. I think you get them for what, $2 at Walmart. Um, and they're good. They hold up. They don't rust out. That's good stuff. Donkey tail for small chatterbaits and micro spinnerbaits. Yes, absolutely. I fully agree.